This right here is something I have been meaning to talk about for a long time. I think most of us know by now that Gen Z is not really known for being the most, patriotic, nationalistic generation of all time. That's a reputation they've had for a while, and a lot of people have taken notice, a lot of people have made their own theories about why that's happening, and most of them are wrong.
So as much as I love the work that Gen Z does, I still crack jokes about them because I guess I'm getting old. I'm a millennial, I'm 30, and a lot of people in Gen Z talk like no one's ever fought the establishment before and no one's ever, not gone along with things before. But Generation Y, the millennials really aren't that patriotic. Gen X really isn't all that patriotic. African Americans during the civil rights era weren't all that patriotic, nor before that when we were in chains. The Italians and the Irish weren't all that patriotic when they first came over here and weren't even considered white yet. So it's really not a new phenomenon.
Now, conservatives see this happening and they think to themselves, well, if our kids are not blindly loyal to the United States the way we are, if they're not willing to die for this country the way we are, then something they're being taught in schools must be making them feel this way. The teachers must be indoctrinating our kids, telling them who knows what, Marxist values, critical race theory. Bottom line is they believe their kids are being taught to think this way. But they never stop to think about what if our kids are consciously making this decision on their own, based off of the environment they live in.
People who are persecuted and people who, or have their rights actively taken away from them typically aren't very patriotic for whatever country they are in. However, Gen Z is facing the brunt of not one, but two economic crises and a third one coming on, but so are millennials. So again, this really isn't like a Gen Z's facing things that no one else has faced before. So I have to put that out there because people have been fighting against the establishment for as long as civilization has been a thing. So I just have to say that before I go on.
I myself am not Gen Z. I am a millennial. My high school days ended about a decade ago. However, I can tell you that Gen Z has been dealt a terrible hand in terms of life. They just watched over 1 million of their fellow countrymen die to a virus that our government did the bare minimum to stop. They just watched a 20-year, $6 trillion war in Afghanistan end with no real answers as to why we were there in the first place. They're being asked to take $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 in student loan debt before they're even 23 just to get an education. Whether you look at climate change or just any measurable human living standard in the US from the last 15 years, it's clear to anyone paying attention that this country is not run by a competent government that can get stuff done, and this government does not care about its people.
You think inner city black kids in Gen X were patriotic? No. I mean, even in, my generation, I remember coming up in the city and, being in different types of football games or basketball games, and they would do the Pledge of Allegiance, and none of us cared. I remember there was this older white lady, and she was so frustrated with me. She was like, "Take your hat." I had a hat on, and she was like, "Take your hat off. Take it off." And like her face was red, and I just took it off. You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Oh, whatever," and I took it off. But so again, this really isn't a new phenomenon because white supremacy and the top elites in the capitalist class have always robbed the working class and minorities blind in this country. I mean, look at the labor movement that happened during the Depression era and before the Depression era. So, the fighting against the establishment really isn't a new thing. It's been happening in every generation. And we're a part of that fight now. All of us here at TYT and anybody else who is really, really trying to push this country to the left. So, it's really just crazy to look at how much the establishment just never really seems to learn anything because here come all the people, here comes the public, here comes the working class again to make change happen.
And then after all of that, you want to look at a classroom full of high school students and tell them to salute the symbol of this government that screwed them over from the day they were born. You're telling me you're shocked when they say they're not going to do that. We can sit here and wonder all day about why Gen Z is doing this, but they just said in that video why they're doing it. Maybe we should listen to them. Gen Z is a smart generation, and older generations are afraid of that. They already understand at such an early age that what they're being forced to take part in is a propaganda ritual. And none of the earlier generations, mine included, ever did anything like that. Everyone in my class stood for the Pledge of Allegiance. We never questioned it. My generation and those before didn't understand, But Gen Z understands perfectly well that the point of having propaganda in schools is to teach a certain narrative. It's to get young people to be blindly loyal to their government and to their leaders before they're able to critically think.
But as I'm always talking about, one of the best things about the times that we do live in is that regardless of what generation you're in, if you want to see change, if you want to see progressive change, we have a very good opportunity to make it happen because the establishment is incredibly unpopular, whether that be the presidential administration, state offices, state governments, Congress itself, the Supreme Court, whose approval rating is absolutely abysmal. You go on and on. The corporate America, Americans' trust in the establishment in general is very, very low. And when that happens, there's always, always more room for change because more people join the fight. So that's really the point. And again, as I'm always talking about, we have to make sure that we out organize these people because our ideas are better. And we know that they are.